Okay, good evening, everybody. Let's see here. This is the June 6th, 2024 Community Preservation Committee meeting. This meeting is being recorded. Anyone intended to make an audio or video recording of this meeting should notify the chair at the beginning of the meeting. Chair Brian Payne calling the meeting to order with a roll call vote. We have someone joining us via Zoom, so we have to go around and do the roll call vote. So all those would sort of approve to start the meeting
By name,
by name.
Dot McFarland.
Kyle Pike.
Alexander Graham.
Brian Payne,
Nathan Edberg.
great. Thank you all. Let's turn Nathan up a bit. Okay, so I hope this to be a pretty short meeting. We don't have a lot to talk about. There's really just two items on the agenda because I did not receive any meeting minutes. Trish probably sent them to me at some point, and I have not been able to locate them, nor could I locate the OneDrive. So we do not have any meeting minutes to approve this evening. So two things to talk about. One, I just wanted to revisit the question of late submissions that we dealt with at the last meeting. I know this committee, before I joined it, spent a lot of time putting together a new process for submitting proposals. Put a lot of work into it. They did quite a bit of research to come up with that process. And I don't feel really comfortable just sort of throwing it out when we receive a submission that's warranted and we all want it and we want to support it. It's worthwhile, but I wonder if we need to create some language in that submission process that opens the door for late submissions. And I'm just happy to hear what you all think about that. Do we need to have language?
I just joined before that meeting, and I remember I just kind of got thrown into everything. How late was that submission? By how many days?
Technically, it came in a few minutes before the meeting started. They had submitted some notifications that they were going to submit it, but they did not actually get the full paperwork in until really as we were taking our seats.
So it just came in.
It just came in. And every other program had come in for an initial review process, and where we basically assess whether or not the project meets the requirements for CPC funding, not necessarily that we agree with the funding of it, just that they meet the criteria for it. We then send notes back to the people who submitted the proposal about how they might improve the proposal. And then they submit a final application, which is a couple weeks before the open public meeting that we had, to giving us time to review it and prepare for questions. So we sort of just threw all that out with a vote, which seems okay, but I just wonder if we want to have a more formal process that opens up the opportunity for sort of emergency submissions like that. Or if you guys were happy with the way we did it last time, then okay.
If I had been here, I would have voted against it.
Yeah.
That I believe that you have processes in place, that people have plenty of time, and if they can't make the deadlines, tough. But that's just the conservative hard ass that I tend to be.
I tend to agree. I know with that purchase of the Carter Bog land, there was COVID timing that involved that, because it came in really late, as I recall. But I think under normal circumstances, if it's not done, it doesn't give us enough time to really discuss it. What if we didn't have enough people in the meeting? It should come in on time. I would accept a day or two late for that first, the early one.
Right.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's fair to other people who submit their things on time, or maybe they were having problems, so they say, well, I'll wait until next year.
Yeah. Well, this particular case, it was an emergency situation. There was some
I've been listening
flooding.
to Susan's emergency situations for 12 years now.
Yeah. Well, I was the only one on the committee to vote not to accept
Oh,
the
okay.
proposal. Everyone else there that night voted to approve it and move forward. or well, what we did, Carl, just to bring you up to speed is, as chair, I decided that we were going to have a vote on whether or not we would even consider the proposal. Then once we considered it, I tried to articulate to everyone that now that we've accepted to consider it, we should assess it as if it came in on time with no bias against the proposal. At that point, everyone voted in favor of it. So it was very clearly that the members of the committee agreed with the proposal. It was a good way to spend the money. And everyone but me agreed that it was okay to view it late, given the
Yeah,
emergency situation.
It was an emergency situation, right? And maybe somehow we need to build a loophole in for that.
It was an
That's what I'm
emergency,
asking.
it was an emergency situation, and also, everything with the timing too. And just everything, since we had the budget and we weren't holding anything really against each other for weight. And it was something that we thought everybody generally would benefit from. And also there was a lot of support from the community that was present at that meeting that day, that were very in favor of it. And I think I even said in the meeting that I would tend to agree, take a conservative approach. But there should be maybe there should be some language in there. It doesn't have to be anything. It give the committee the opportunity to decide on whether or not to hear submissions. And I don't know if we want to get into anything that's too late, because how often do community members really have a chance to get this type of funding for projects that might be dire, where there isn't a budget in another department's budget that can be used for it.
You could say something like, emergency submissions will be considered one at a time,
Yeah.
Nathan?
individually.
And perhaps even have some kind of a secondary deadline that, if somebody wants us to do an emergency consideration 10 days before a meeting, well, I think that's a lot different than the emergency situation a day before the meeting when you have no time to look at it.
Right. Nathan, you have anything you want to throw in?
I'm pretty split on it myself. I do have a serious concern about not having enough time to gather information to make a good decision on whether to support a particular expenditure. With this particular one, I felt like I had all the information in front of me that I needed. If there was missing information, I would have voted to not accept the late submission myself. But I thought the application itself was complete enough that I was comfortable in this case, so I did support it. I'm okay having a hard deadline, if that's an option. I think it does simplify everything. I think it does make it more fair, to Carl's example of, someone may feel that they missed the deadline, so they don't submit an application, which I think is a large positive, because, it doesn't put extra burden on our committee to try to scramble to answer the question. And for those that did apply on time, they get, the proper consideration.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, this wasn't the first such situation. I believe last year there was also a late submission that went up in the fall. It was, if I missed that meeting, I would have voted against it then for the same reasons. But I think it was Recreation again, submitted something in the fall directly to, and then it was approved. It had no competition. It was a situation where we received CPC money back from a program. So we had money kind of in the bank again, even though the previous submission process was competitive and certain proposals had been rejected based purely on the lack of funds. We received some monies back from older projects. And so now we had money in the bank. And so we spent it on this proposal that kind of came in the fall period that wasn't involved in a competitive process. I believe it was also from Recreation. And I wasn't at that meeting. We voted against that one.
Yeah, so
It happens is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it likely will happen again. And
A
so,
statement then, something to the effect of late proposals or submissions will only be considered on an emergency basis. And then how do I say the rest of it?
so what I have right now is emergency late submissions may be submitted up, I sort of picked 48 hours.
Yeah,
Prior to the
Mhm.
open community meeting.
right,
Uh,
We could go a different direction and then say something like still have the 48 hour deadline before the public meeting, but say at the committee's discretion.
yeah. That's
And
what I
with
was looking for.
with the availability, with the
Right.
and the availability of funds, because I would
Absolutely.
hate I'd never want to be in a situation where there's limited funding. And then something comes late, because if there's limited funding and then something comes late, then I don't think the late submission should be heard at all.
Right, you shouldn't
At that
consider-
point.
Right,
So we should make language in there that targets our ability at our discretion when there are resources available to hear or to schedule maybe enough, like additional something to hear other proposals or something
Yeah.
like that.
And just a full context for Carl, the recreation committee initially volunteered to pull back the tennis court.
Yeah.
Which we had already vetted. And so I think they were
And it
thinking,
would
well,
be
that makes it okay. For me, that made it worse.
We still move forward.
We
with the
did,
tennis
which I
courts.
pushed for that in the meeting, because we'd already vetted that, and basically had approved it. And so now that they were pulling back on that one.
I think there were a lot of variables that night. I mean, there was a lot of community interest in the topic. There was a lot of support, both from, people that work in this building and then people from,
Mhm.
that cared about
But
the
but
fields.
it's our decision.
But in the end, it's our decision, which I think was the right thing to do, was to
Yeah.
call a vote to say, hey, should we even hear it? And I also think it's the right decision that it's something that we probably should be we shouldn't do often.
Yeah. Well, I've only been on the committee 2 years, and we've done it both years.
So I think
Pretty
that's why,
often.
so I think that's right that we should put some language in there
Right.
when there's available funding after discussion, because is the goal, I mean, what's the major goal of the committee is to,
Right.
if we have funding available to try to improve things that the
Right.
community wants to hear,
Right.
we do it. But due process is important. The second you stop following due process is when things fall apart. But there's always situations where the committee should act at their own discretion. And maybe we make it
Right.
more of a strict vote where we need all community, all members present or something like that. You could add
Right.
different provisions into that language that protects us, protects the due process, and
Make like
still,
a super majority vote requirement.
yeah,
So I'm getting a sense for what everybody is saying, that they would like to see language added to the application process to allow for
Yeah,
emergency.
But make it
submission.
difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So-
I have no objection to having the language added.
Mhm.
I would suggest that 48 hours is not long enough.
Okay.
I
What
would
would you
suggest 5 work days,
okay.
something like that.
so in this case that we just faced, it would not have met.
It wouldn't have met.
Wouldn't have met that criteria, but I'm fine with that. So what I'll propose to do then is I'll draft some language based on what the feedback I've written down here, and I'll have something for us to actually deconstruct and critique at our next meeting, and we'll vote on it
There we go.
if we can, vote on it and approve it and insert it into the process.
Excellent.
Okay. Nathan, you have any other comments on this? I keep turning my head away from you. I apologize for that, but.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, I'll just repeat that I'm okay having like a hard deadline the month or 2 months ahead of schedule as well. Whatever our regular deadline for submission is, I would probably support just saying no late submissions effectively. But I also understand that there was certainly a value to me being able to accept the late submission last time. So, there's pluses and minuses both ways.
Yeah,
It's an age-old question, really. if
We
you think
don't-
About it.
we don't want process to get in the way of purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
And so our mission is to funnel funds into projects that the community deems appropriate for community preservation.
So, something that might be added to that statement, would be something to the effect of if funding is available.
You
Yeah.
need to have that
You
here,
do that,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because at that point, then we would have no
Right,
choice
if
but
it's
to
already,
dismiss it.
looks like it's divided up, then what's the use?
If funding is available, 5-day notice, at the committee's discretion,
Right,
a complete application with,
it has to be complete.
it has to be
Right.
complete. This is all language I've heard from everybody, and a 5-day hard deadline is what I've heard and what I'll incorporate into the language.
What's the hard deadline now currently?
There is none.
There's no.
Well, there's deadlines, there's two deadlines.
process,
Yeah,
right?
there's an initial deadline and it's a calendar day
Oh,
that,
okay.
that moves around. And that's the initial submission process, and then there's the deadline for the full application submission.
Are you familiar with those forms?
Not as much as I would like to
Yeah.
be,
Okay.
because I kind of jumped in right after
Yeah.
the process had ended.
Okay.
It takes,
and-
it takes some getting used to. I'm
Yeah.
still not super familiar with them, so,
It's still a lot easier to understand.
Yeah.
From the new paperwork that's been done.
yeah.
The new applications look pretty thorough. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
At least what
And
the
that,
submittals
and
look
that
like.
pre-thing too.
No, yeah, it allowed me to make a decision.
Yeah.
Like Nate said, the application that we received was complete enough where we could act on it.
Yeah.
I think,
So we need to start gearing up for the next round. And
One
so,
more thought.
On the
traditionally, we meet.
Brian,
Yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
one more thought on the late submission.
Yep. Go for it.
Maybe something like late submissions will be considered after any on-time submissions.
Okay.
So
That's
in
a
terms
good
of
point.
funding availability, the ones that were on time need to be sort of sorted out first.
That's a great point, Nathan. I'm not sure if we did that in the meeting. If
I
we
don't remember
pushed them
either.
to the very end or not.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think so. Because I think the tennis courts were the last ones that which was already from the same group of people, some from recreation,
Yeah.
but I don't think we did that. That would have been a really great idea. Just to send the right message.
Mhm.
I think we will have considered all of them by then anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would have at least individually, mentally, I mean, I knew going into the meetings which ones I would vote for and which ones I
Yeah.
wouldn't. In this case, I was gonna vote for all of them. The year before, was a little bit different.
Yeah.
If the same thing happened the year before, it would have been a much harder
Right.
conversation to have because we didn't have enough money.
yeah, and which is why at that point, I feel like we all would have maybe agreed or at least voted on not hearing that.
Yeah, I'm
That's
not
fine.
sure
Sorry.
what would
Add-on
happen.
discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So since we mentioned recreation, I have to say, my sister and I took her grandchildren to the beach,
right.
to the playground area. And these kids are 3 years old
Mhm.
and they had such a good time. They used every piece of equipment,
Oh, the pirate ship?
the pirate ship one, all the other little kids and medium kids that were there. They had a heck of a time.
Mhm.
They enjoyed it all. I was pleased.
Yeah, no, my son Jack, actually, we were there twice, earlier this week. We live right around the corner from there.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's an easy walk for us and,
Yeah.
the young dog and young son and the beach is not free, but
Yeah.
we love it down there.
Good. Okay.
Love it down
So
there.
let's turn our attention to the schedule for next year.
Yep.
Last year, we held the initial review. That is, the full applications aren't submitted. It's like a 1-page basic summary of what they want to do. The people who are submitting come, we ask a couple questions, and basically we're just assessing whether or not it meets the basic requirements of the CPC funding based on the Community Preservation Act. And so there are buckets that the funds have to be drawn from, and then in each bucket, like historic, open space, recreation, and like an other category. And like for historic, there are certain requirements.
Oh,
It has to be designated a historic site
Mhm.
by either the town, the state, or the federal government, things like that. There's a specific legal definition for restoration. you know, these are things we have to assess. We did that in November. I felt like we had plenty of time last year. The year before I felt rushed, but I feel like we planned out well enough. And so I would propose that we keep that early November deadline, or that's dead meeting for us. So the deadline for them would have to be probably October for them to submit it, to give everybody a couple weeks to review it before we meet first Thursday of November. Then we met to review the final applications the first Thursday of January, with a potential a second one the first Thursday of February. We didn't end up needing that this time around because we didn't have a ton of applications. Last year, we didn't need 2 meetings to get through them all. So that gives them, from our feedback in November, about a month to complete their applications. They submitted their applications before the Christmas holiday. That gave Tricia time to put the paperwork together and provide hard copies for those who needed it. So it gave them about a month to take our feedback and finish the application process. We didn't have any complaints. We only had one person removed from the process between those 2 dates, and that application was really outside.
Incomplete, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was nowhere near complete.
Right.
It was for the lighting, and it was gonna cost like millions of dollars. It was just like a huge amount. Maybe not, maybe it wasn't millions, but it was a lot of money. It would have consumed more than our entire budget.
Right.
And so I don't think the turnaround time was the cause of that applicant stepping away. But otherwise, we had no complaints that it was not enough time, that 1 month period between November's meeting and their deadline sometime in early December, when they had to have it to our office so that we could meet early January to review them. So now that I've gone over that, does anyone have any concerns about the schedule we used last year? Should we shoot for the same thing?
I think it was reasonable.
Okay. So we'll schedule, initial review will be the first Thursday
It's the 7th.
of November. Thank you.
So
And the review of final applications will be the first Thursday of January, which is
December would be the 5th or the 12th, depending on which.
not December. Oh, that's when their applications would be due.
That's the due, yeah.
What was it?
December 5 or December 12. If we're not looking at them until January.
You want to give them the 12th?
Give them the 12th, yeah.
Okay. Application. So let's back up then. When should we have their 1-page a review of project assessment due? If we're looking at it November 7th,
how long do you think you need?
They're
You
like-
need a full month or 2 weeks?
they're 1 page.
So 2 weeks,
You
the
could probably
24th,
review them in a couple of hours.
October 24th then.
October 24th. Project, those are called project assessments.
Yeah.
Or do. Let's write this out here.
So, November, we take a look and maybe some of them don't quite qualify, so we give them to the 2nd of October to finish that.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I missed your question.
They can bring them in on the 7th of November. And then we have,
No,
no,
they submit their, oh, you're onto the application.
no, I'm doing the first,
The first bit
project
is
assessment.
due October 24th.
okay, well, what's going on November?
We meet as a committee to review those project assessments
On the 7th.
on the 7th.
So we have 2 weeks to review the 1-pager project assessment forms.
So the other meeting is to discuss it in October 24th.
And at that,
No, the October 24th is not a meeting. It's a due date
Oh, dude, okay.
for those individuals who want to submit a project assessment form.
and then that's really just us confirming the validity of
We do that on November 7th.
on November 7th.
Right.
And then we say, okay, this fits the criteria, please submit an application, and then the application process starts and they have until December.
The applications are due December 12th.
December 12th.
Oh, the applications are due, sorry.
That's the full applications are
Yeah.
due December 12th. We meet as a committee to review those applications on January. What's the first Thursday of January?
The second technically,
Oh, do we want to do that?
we'll do it on the
No,
ninth.
that's the day after New Year's.
All right, 9. All right, and we will also schedule a second review meeting just in case for the first Thursday of February,
Which will be the 6th.
6th.
Cool.
And then the public hearing will take place the first Thursday of March.
The 6th.
Thank you. All right. So I'll just review that for everybody. Project assessments are due to the office on October 24th. The committee will meet to assess those assessments on November 7th. Applications are due December 12th. The committee will meet to review those applications on January 9th and February 6th, potentially. Public hearing will be held on March 6th. Before we do all of that, we also need to have a public meeting where people can just come and tell us, this is what we think you should spend the money on. The last time we did that, it was basically just the department heads,
Okay.
you know, recreation, conservation, open space. We should have that,
August.
yeah, August or September. What do you guys think?
I would say after Labor Day, September.
Okay.
What's that Thursday after Labor Day?
The 5th,
September 5th?
September 5th.
Let me
Wait,
check
let
my
me just make sure.
calendar. Have stuff going on that week.
Yep.
No, I'm good. I'm good. So we'll have our initial public meeting. For people to express interest on September 5th. Well, that really filled up the calendar.
There you go. It's not too far away either.
It's not far away. Does anyone have any interest in meeting over the summer?
That's why I said after Labor Day.
I don't see the only item, now that we've done this, the only item we would have is this loophole, which we could address at the September 5th meeting.
Yeah, I would think that would be sufficient.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, there's no other business to be conducted.
not that I can think of.
Oh.
Okay, so I'll make a note to have this ready for you guys, couple weeks before that.
Yeah.
So that you have a time to digest it. Might even do it tonight.
Get it out of the way.
Well, if you send it, I'll provide feedback.
There's
Get it ready.
There's rules that Tricia keeps telling me I'm not allowed to do that.
Oh, okay, then don't do it.
Not allowed to communicate with committee members about committee work outside of open meetings.
Yeah,
It's
that's,
like the
yeah.
open meeting law. I don't know. I sent an email around and she said, do not let it.
One can argue that one-on-one
I've heard that
is
too.
not a problem.
Right,
Yeah.
because that's not a meeting. It
Right.
takes,
I remember that
the
now.
majority to meeting or just three?
Anytime it's more than one-on-one,
I think
It
it's three,
becomes
yeah, it's
questionable.
three,
I
yeah.
remember that because one of the town meetings, I sat next to 2 other members of the meeting.
Right.
And the
that's
guy
the
said you
problem.
can't even sit next
Right.
to each other
Mm.
Right.
in groups of 3, so we had to move.
If y'all meet at a party that somebody's giving,
It's
yeah.
okay.
that's
Just
okay.
don't talk about
Yeah, you
committee
can't talk
work.
about business, but if it's one-on-one.
I think, okay, so maybe I'll do that. Well, see.
We can always meet a lot like Zoom if we wanted to open a meeting, something, just a quick 15 minutes to
Well,
review it.
you
too.
have to have it
you know,
posted.
Gotta
first.
post it
Post it and everything else.
Yeah.
like 48 hours ahead or something. like
Yeah.
that. I think we can do it in September. It's just gonna be one paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay,
We'll do it in September then.
unless you guys want to have an August meeting, but I don't.
No, I think I'm gonna be on the Cape.
All right. Any other business that people want to bring up before we adjourn?
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm okay, yeah.
Okay, just one thing from me, if people are interested, on June 18th at 12 o'clock, the CPC statewide is doing a CPC boot camp Zoom
yeah.
seminar.
What day is that?
It's the 18th. I think it's a Tuesday. coming up at noon.
Tuesday at noon.
Yeah, if you're interested, you can just go to the CPC's website and they'll have information. I'm gonna try to I pick my kids up at school at noon on that day, so I'll be home by 12:15, 12:20, and then log
Yeah.
in. But there are a lot of moving parts to CPC. I found, Alex, and you might wanna
Yeah, that's why I'm
check
thinking.
it out.
about
And if
it.
nothing else, check out the website. There's a ton of great blog posts and papers written about different relevant subjects. About last year, we had a big, not big, but a quick little controversy about whether or not we could fund a church. They ended up withdrawing. They actually never submitted the final application, actually never communicated with us after the first one, but we debated it a little bit. We also debated about the Veterans Memorial,
Mm.
about whether or not we could fund a memorial,
Right.
things, and there's all kinds of great information on the website. So I'm gonna try to go to that. Anything from you, Nathan?
Yeah, I'll recommend the boot camp. I've done it before, and in 1 hour, you really get a lot of good information.
All right, seeing no other business before the committee, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
That's almost a
I'll make
motion.
the motion.
Oh, sorry.
Brian Payne, aye.
Thought I.
Hell Pike, aye.
Alexander Graham, aye.
Nathan, I.
Great, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Let's put in the CP.